So I first started playing D&D about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was at my friend's house just down the road. And his dad was the one that was running it. So none of us had ever played D&D before. Uh, we all played Warhammer and Warhammer 40k and that kind of stuff. So we kind of had this impression that it was going to be like this kind of war game. And we also played quite a lot of Skyrim because that had come out. Because this must have been 2012 or 2013. So Skyrim was about a year old, and we had all been playing that. So we were all excited to kind of experience a mix between Skyrim and Warhammer, which is what we thought it was going to be like. Um, so we got there. Well, I got there late because I'd actually been to swimming, which was something I used to do every Friday. So I arrived at about 8 o'clock and it started at 7, so I was already an hour late. And everyone was making their characters. Now, this was first edition. First edition is quite hardcore compared to the newer editions. So, our friend's dad had got us to make 3 characters each because I think in the back of his mind he knew that quite a lot of the characters were gonna die, or having more characters would make the fights easier. So at least we would get through like the first session. So we were playing first edition and we were building our characters. We were given money based on what class we chose. So we were flipping through the. There was one player's handbook between us. It was the old first edition player's handbook, with like the massive like monster on the front of it, and some of the adventurers trying to steal the jewels in the eyes and stuff like that. So we were all flipping through it, and we all had 3 characters each. So we were all trying to get all our characters done at once, but there was only one book, and there were about like 8 of us playing. So it was really impossible to like get it done without any arguments or anyone. And we were all about, we must have all been 10 or 11. So yeah, it wasn't the most organised thing, and we were flipping through the book, and people who had divine classes like clerics or priests or monks were buying like crucifixes because they needed holy objects to channel their power through, and people would either buy the best stuff in the book, or they would buy the kind of mediocre stuff and then save some of their money because they thought they'd like need it. And then there were 3 people in the middle who would buy the mediocre stuff and then go and buy just random shit. I remember my mate had about 30 gold pieces left, 20 or 30, and torches were like 2 silver pieces each or 2 copper pieces each. So yeah, 2 copper pieces, and 1 copper piece is like 100th of a gold piece. So he bought 270 something, almost 300 torches to just carry around, so when we were going through dungeons he could light up the way, by just throwing them out in front of us. We had literally an endless supply of torches. So yeah, the stuff we bought was some of it was deceptively useful, and some of it was just crap that we never used. Like rope. Usually rope is very useful, but we hardly ever used it. In fact, we should have used it, but we'll get onto that later. So we were all making 3 characters each and buying gear, and then I actually had to leave because I had to get back home for 11 o'clock. So I left before anyone even started playing. We had still been making the characters, and I left when I made my final one because I had to go home. And everyone actually stayed there at my mate's until about 3 o'clock in the morning, actually playing. So I missed the first 4 hours of it, I guess. So when I jumped in next week, I was also an hour late because I was at swimming. I didn't know what was going on. So I jumped in, and we were in a dungeon. I don't know how we got there. I kind of just assumed that we all just woke up in a dungeon, but I think we were in the town and then we got sent to the dungeon. I'm not sure. Anyway, I think it was a lighthouse. So we were investigating this lighthouse near the town, and we went down into the dungeon. And we got to a long corridor. We heard like growling from the end of the corridor, and we were like, "Ooh, what's that? What could it be?" And then it was just pitch black apart from the 200 torches we had on this end. And then from the darkness we came shambling towards us a ghoul, and we were like, well, what's a ghoul? Because we weren't used to all this like classic D&D stuff, D&D monsters, so we didn't actually know what a ghoul was. So my friend's dad said it was basically a zombie, so we were like, oh right, well if there's one zombie there must be more, because we were in the mindset of like massive hordes of zombies, like from Day of the Dead or Zombieland. We didn't like understand that there would just be one zombie that we had to fight, or that the corridor was too narrow for all of us to just like gang round it and kill it. So our expectations really mismatched what the DM was the original like style of D&D when it was back in the first edition. So we were all bickering about what we wanted to do. Whether we wanted to set fire to it or whether we were just going to go up and stab it, because we thought it'd just die instantly because it's like a zombie, right? It's not very strong. So we were all arguing, and then one of the girls just said, right, I go up and hit it, and then she went up and she missed, and I think the ghoul actually bit her, and it took like a massive chunk of her arm off, and everyone had like below 10 HP, 10 health, and I think the ghoul did about 5 damage, and she only had 8 HP, so she was already like almost dead. And I remember when our friend's dad rolled the dice, and he was just like, yeah, that's 5 damage. We all just looked at each other like, wait, what? Like, this could kill us in 2 hits. Like, this isn't going to be very easy. So we managed to kill it, but some of us definitely almost died, and that was the first like fight we'd had like ever. That's the first combat we'd experienced. So we were kind of wary of these new ghouls that we had come into contact with, and we knew that next time we'd take we wouldn't take as much of a combat approach. We'd try and be smart about it, like trap it or something. So then we go down the corridor, and eventually we get to like this large room with a chasm in the middle, and there's some goblins or skeletons, I can't remember, it was so long ago. Anyway, there are actual like clever enemies on the other side of the chasm firing arrows at us. So I remember one of my characters was an elf rogue, and he was trying to shoot arrows across the chasm, and I rolled like 3 attacks, and I missed them all because I was rolling like 8s and 7s, and like I don't think I got a roll above 10. So I was like, what? How is this possible? I'm an elf. I'm supposed to be able to like hit stuff. So then I got really angry, and I was just like, right. I flipped the bow around, so I'm holding it the wrong way around, and I just shoot myself. And the DM's just like, okay, roll. Okay, I got 14, and he was just like, yeah, the arrow goes straight into your head. You're dead. I just sat there and looked at him and just thought, oh, okay, that's how it is. Anyway, so the fight finishes across the chasm. Some of the other characters have jumped across the chasm to actually start hacking up like the goblins, and then it came to us. We were still on the other side of the chasm, so we had to jump across. Now, 2 of my characters, because I only had 2 left now, one of them looted all the stuff from my dead character just to make sure like nothing valuable was left on him. And then I jumped across the chasm, and I successfully made my strength checks to jump across. And my friend had made a character, and he had a model for the character, which was an old Lurtz model from Lord of the Rings. It was a metal model, and he'd painted it. He'd bought it and painted it just for the session, because this orc character that he'd made was like the one. All his other characters were like sideshows, really. This was his true character. And he had kept him back from the fight so that he wasn't killed. So he ran, and I think he was one of the last to jump across the chasm, and he had by far the highest strength out of all of us, because instead of using stats from the book, we'd rolled our stats, So some of the characters were really powerful, some of them were really weak. And he definitely had some of the best stats out of all of us. And he rolled, and I think he rolled a 4 or a 3, and he fell down the chasm, and that was it. We never saw that orc again. Yeah. Sad. Yeah, that was kind of sad. Anyway, so we carried on, and we got through the dungeon, and then we went back to. I can't remember why we were in the dungeon. This must have been. I must have left early again. But anyway, we got back to the town, and we arrived back at the town, and there's a massive statue, like in the promenade going through the middle of town. The legends are that the statue protects the town. So I'm like, well, that's just not true, is it? Right, I'm gonna hit the statue and prove to everyone that it's just a normal statue. So I go up, and everyone's just like, no, don't do that. Are you stupid? I'm just like, what? No, it's not real, is it? So I hit the statue, and okay, let's have some context here. The statue, all my characters were elves. I don't know why, but they were. All my characters were elves. So the maximum height of my character would have been like 6'10", right? And this statue was about 30 foot tall. Okay, it's a big ass statue, so I would have just like hacked at its toe. Okay, and it just stepped off its foundations and just stepped on me. Okay, so I was instantly dead. I only had one character left. We were 3 sessions in, and I had one character out of my original 3 left, and I was just like, how is this possible? How are we adventurers when we can die so easily? But then we began to realise that it was less about us being adventurers, and it was more about us being a team and getting through the puzzles and the fights together. So it was change of pace from going from Skyrim, where you can literally shout people off the side of mountains, to going to Dungeons and Dragons, where you're a little elf and you just get stepped on by statues. So yeah, that was the first time I played D&D.